Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bond Headquarters. My name is Luke, and I wanted to just kind of go over and talk with you about some latest news about George Lazenby. I'm going to Australia in just a few weeks, and I'll be there for a couple of weeks. My daughter's getting married there, and so this is the big trip for the year. And of course, when I'm going on any kind of location, my first thought is, okay, well, what's some Bond locations? And I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing in Australia. Bond has not filmed in Australia, and I just nothing. And so I was in a little bit of a shock. So I tried to do more research, trying to find some place, some kind of hidden little museum or something to visit that's Bond related while we're over there. And so, I mean, if any of the viewers, if anybody knows of anything in Australia that is Bond related that I can go visit or something, just please put it in the comments. But while doing the research, I came across the latest article about George Lazenby and how he recently traveled back to Australia to reunite with his family. And the person that brought him there and was caring for him was his ex-wife, Pam Shriver, who is a 5-time Wimbledon doubles champion. And they had divorced, and but then now she is kind of his main caregiver after all these years of being apart. He's like 86, 85, 86 years old now, and unfortunately suffering from dementia. And so it was quite the task to get him back to Australia. But it was something kind of his whole family got involved in, trying to get him back there to visit his relatives back home in Australia. So there was a really interesting article in the Telegraph. And this was January, January 18th of this year that this article came out. And apparently his health has been suffering pretty bad, but he was good enough to travel. He made that journey. And poor George is in pretty rough shape. His memory escapes him, but the funny thing is, as she mentioned, with dementia is, he can't remember what he did yesterday, but all those long-term memories from when he was a kid and growing up, things like that, those are all still there. And so Australia, apparently, like hearing the birds there and things of that nature, have stirred a lot of those long-term stored memories from when he was much younger and had lived there. But it was quite an interesting story of getting George there to visit his family, but then the health struggles that he's going through. And when I was going through this as well, it was kind of sad that in just about 4 years ago, he was fired from being on tour with that Music of Bond tour that he was on. And so there'd be the music would play, and he would do some interviews and things. And apparently, he had gotten just a little too racy in some of the comments, a little too much information. Now, I mean, we all know George has always been very forthcoming with a lot of information of his career, behind the scenes things, especially with co-stars and women that he's met.
This is a bit weird because I was just entering a girl's apartment in Paris, and the phone was ringing, and she says, "It's Patu." I said, "How can that be? Nobody knows I'm with you." And it was Maggie Abbott. She'd called my flatmate, said I went to La Capole restaurant, and the maitre d' said I left with this girl. Well, even one other thing they did that was funny. This guy, I met him later, and he told me why he came up to my room where they were putting me up in Grosvenor House, my suite. And he came up to the room, knocked on the door with this beautiful woman. He said, this girl wants to make love to you. And I said, really? So we climbed in and we're going for it in bed, and he's sitting there in a suit watching me. But
along the way. So he's always been pretty open about that. But apparently there were some people that were pretty offended because it got pretty racy. Well, I was thinking about that, and I'm thinking, it's not as if just 2026 is when George started developing dementia, and that it probably had started even back at that point. And dementia does tend to take away some of those social norms, some of those social cues where you kind of can read the room and know, okay, well, we could go just so far with this, but dementia kind of takes away those barriers, and you just speak what's on your mind. You just say what's coming out. You may not even realize what you're talking about, or that it could be offensive to someone. So I just kind of felt really bad. So I'm just like, well, maybe some of these things were happening back then. Maybe he had already been diagnosed at that point, and we're just kind of finding out about it now. He's been dealing with it for a number of years. I don't know, but yeah, it made me feel really, really sad to hear that George is having a tough time now, and so yeah, a lot of thoughts going out to him, and hoping. You say, hope for a quick recovery, or something. Well, this isn't like a recovery thing, but but I'm glad that he's happy. He has someone who cares and wants to take care of him. He's got some good support from family, it seems, and he got to enjoy going back and seeing like his sister, and so it was pretty cool story. About George, and so I'm not sure if anybody else had really heard about it, because I really hadn't heard about him. I knew he wanted to retire from any kind of show business. That was like 4 years ago or so that he had said something like that, or at least a couple of years ago. But I didn't realize it was probably due to his health really starting to struggle so much. But I'm glad he's got some good support there, and just kind of catching you up on some news that I found out about one of the former Bonds. And but then again, if you know of anything in Australia where I can go and visit, and I was even looking for some kind of monument to George or something as Bond, but I couldn't find anything. And because my daughter, who's over there, says, "Oh yeah, they like to kind of celebrate and have monuments and stuff about a lot of Australian stars and things like that." But I can't find anything about George. So if you know of anything, please put it in the comments, because I'm hoping if I'm in that area, I could track it down. All right, we'll talk to you in the next video. Take care, and thanks for checking this out. Bye.